You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristodoulou.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristodoulou. It is August 2nd, 2021, and today marks the beginning of week 2 of the NFL training camp. A lot of things to talk about, a lot of things going on around the league, some big news that just happened earlier on this morning as I was prepping the show, so there's plenty for us to get into. We're going to start the show off today with a little bit of quarterback battle discussion, just kind of going over the 5 big QB battles we have throughout the league. And to start things off with the conversation, we'll begin with the Broncos. This is a very tight-knit one so far. It sounds like both of the quarterbacks, from what we have gathered here, nobody's really, put themselves ahead of the other. They've both been very accurate, very safe with the football, which is something that both of these quarterbacks have been kind of, they've been scrutinized for in the past with not being able to protect the football as well. Drew Lock especially last year. But overall, it seems like they're pretty much neck and neck. Bridgewater has thrown the first pick of the two, but is the only turnover that both quarterbacks have committed with the football. So overall, real neck and neck conversation there. There's no real separation between the two. I'm sure this is one that'll be rolling through for the next couple of weeks if nobody's really clear cut. I feel like this is going to be one that's going to boil down to a lot of preseason games and who's going to make the most mistakes during live actual game action. Now, over in New England, this is one where it looks like somebody's edging out another one. I would say Cam Newton, from what I've been hearing, the talk around the area that I live in, being a New Englander myself, it sounds like Newton is the one that's impressing a little bit more than Jones. While Jones has looked solid in some aspects, he has looked like a rookie in others. And also Cam Newton has gotten some pretty solid praise from some places and places I didn't even expect to hear praise from just because of how negatively they were on him last year. But Newton's been making some good throws. He's been making some really solid touchdown passes. It sounds like he's finding a connection with some of the new additions in guys like Juanu Smith and Hunter Henry. It sounds like he really likes the tight end thing they got going on over there. But overall, it sounds like Newton has steadily received some praise. Jones has been 50-50 in some aspects, but it sounds like Newton's leading the way over there in New England. Then for the New Orleans Saints, third quarterback battle of the 5 we have here. Sounds like Jameis Winston is edging out Taysom Hill a little bit. The week this past sounds like it belonged to Winston for the most part. However, on Saturday, Taysom Hill had a monster day where Winston kind of faltered a bit, had some bad throws, and by bad throws, I mean they were off by only a few inches, but they were incompletions nonetheless. But overall, it sounds like Winston is the guy. This is something that I kind of have been foreseeing for quite some time now. It's no surprise to me. I think the Saints are having the competition to really push Winston more so than anything, because limiting Taysom Hill and the gadget player that he is to being a full-blown quarterback and not being able to use him as a surprise weapon the way the New Orleans Saints have utilized him the last few years, I think only hurts that offense, especially when you think of obviously losing Drew Brees and losing a lot of pieces that they did this past offseason. You want to be able to keep as much intact as possible, and using Taysom Hill as like that dual threat gadget guy and having Winston as the QB1 makes the most sense to me over there in New Orleans. Now, for San Francisco, what is supposed to not be a quarterback competition sounds like it's turning into one. From what I've been seeing and hearing, Trey Lance is showing some good signs. He's making some good throws. Jimmy Garoppolo is struggling in some instances. And a lot of the people in the San Francisco area sound like they're convinced that Trey Lance is going to make this a quarterback battle, even though Shanahan himself came out and said it wasn't. And he was even stated as saying, Garoppolo, when he's on it, should be able to beat Lance out, no problem. This goes along with just the weird, it almost feels like fake praise of Garoppolo to make it seem like he's all in on him still. But even though we know Trey Lance is there and that, he made it apparent he was going after Matthew Stafford, the whole thing is weird. I think San Francisco is just trying to, play their hand very tight to the chest and be able to deal Garoppolo for as much as possible when the time comes for him to be dealt. And then for the last quarterback battle we have going on, out there in Chicago, Andy Dalton and Justin Fields. This is another one where the veteran seems to be outplaying the rookie a little bit here, while Justin Fields has shown a lot of what is the word that I'm looking for here? He has showed a lot of promise, and he's flashed some serious talent in certain situations. He has made those rookie mistakes that, again, you expect to see rookies making in those types of competitions. But overall, it sounds like Dalton's just been pretty much the veteran starter, and he's always been a very solid veteran at that. I mean, year in and year out, Dalton has always been very solid, and from what I'm reading, a lot of people are happy with the way he's playing. The Bears did come out and say he was the starter going into this season. I don't know if Justin Fields is going to be able to push him out. There's not as much pressure having selected him later, as in like within the first 11 picks as opposed to the first three, like the first three quarterbacks went off the shelf. But overall, it sounds like the quarterback battles, for the most part, while still are undecided, it looks like New England's starting to find a front runner. The Bears, depending on how much Justin Fields can grow in the next few weeks, it sounds like Andy Dalton might be getting the start for the first few weeks. But Trey Lance is making it a battle, and over in Denver, you don't really know what's going on there. And again, I think, in my opinion, Jameis Winston has the New Orleans job locked up. It's just a matter of really pushing Winston to get the best out of him, in my opinion, for what's going on over there in New Orleans. I mean, even Drew Brees told him last year, this is your team now. So that's what we're looking at as far as quarterback battles go. Pads are coming this week for a handful of teams, so that is something that we are going to keep an eye on, where the play starts to get a little bit more realistic in terms of, practice versus game and how things will look for the quarterback. So we'll get a little bit of a more true idea as to how these quarterbacks are going to be playing with a true look offense where everyone's in pads. We got the full 11 on 11s, and we're, offenses have now been installed, and now they're really just trying to see who is better and who is able to take in all this information, process it the best, and dish it out as the starter for their teams. Now, as far as actual news going on around the league, first story we'll start with here. This is like old news, but also new news as well. Linebacker Jordan Hicks out of Arizona, very unhappy with the team. He requested a trade months ago. This is something that, it has been known for a while now. Basically just like kicked up the dirt on these and was like, hey, I came out right and said that the GM told him that he is not able to compete for the starting job. For those of you that don't know, the Cardinals obviously last year drafted Isaiah Simmons, who's a freak of an athlete. And then on top of that, they went after Zaven Collins this year as well in the draft, both first rounders. And it sounds like he's the odd man out, but the GM Steve Keim even came out and said, you're not going for a starting position here. You are playing second fiddle to these guys, which obviously is frustrating, especially when you think of an athlete, everyone's a competitor. If they're in the NFL, you have to be a competitor to some extent, and that's a shot to the ego. Hicks has been a solid linebacker over in Arizona. He's been a starter pretty much every single year for every single game that he has been in Arizona, but it sounds like, he's really trying to stir the pot now and get himself out of there. It sounds like he wants to be a starter somewhere. He believes it from his statements that he's been making the last few days, and I'd be shocked if the Cardinals don't end up finding a suitor. It might take a little bit longer just because of where we are at in the offseason. Everyone kind of has their big, filled out 90-man rosters, and they're going through the motions and figuring things out. But as players start to get exposed to the preseason and, push comes to shove, I'm sure that, somebody's going to be like, all right, our linebacking corps might not be as promising or as good as we thought. Let's take a look at what the Cardinals have to offer there and what are they looking for someone like Hicks. But I expect to see him get traded. I don't think he's going to stay there, in my opinion. He has been taking on a mentor role for the linebackers from what I've been reading, but if somebody's that adamant about being a starter, I could just see it eventually becoming a problem. And in my opinion, the way the Cardinals are set up, they have a very young, promising linebacker prospects. Isaiah Simmons showed great promise last year. And on top of that, you have to expect that Zaven Collins is going to be a great guy for them to have right out of the gates. Make the play, get some capital, and just continue to build on the team in the future going forward. Find somebody who would be more, I guess, applicable to a backup role as opposed to Hicks, who would be a great backup, but is somebody who could probably be a starter and get you something good from another team. Now, away from the Cardinals now and focusing on the Minnesota Vikings. This, from what it sounds like, is not good for them. They are currently missing 3 of their quarterbacks due to COVID right now. It does not look good for Minnesota at this very moment. Their training camp has probably been thrown way out of whack because of this. Kirk Cousins, Kellen Mond, and another are all missing from practice this week. They'll be gone the entirety of the week. It's going to force the Vikings to bring in quarterbacks, let me just make sure I'm getting these names right here, Case Cookus and Jackson Erdmanen as quarterbacks to just be bodies, to have somebody throwing the football to their receivers and tight ends and running these offenses here alongside of quarterback Jake Browning, who's been there. He's the only ready available Vikings quarterback that was on the roster prior to this all happening. But it'll be interesting to see how things go and operate this week from Minnesota. Keep an eye on that, in my opinion. I think that should be interesting just to see if, it causes any problems. And it sounds like, from what I've been seeing around the league, there have been some position groups that when, if someone's getting a case, that everyone else is in the close contact protocol and whatever it may be, it's causing issues for teams. And, some coaches have been voicing frustrations, Ron Rivera being another person. And I'm sure the Vikings now are very frustrated because Kirk Cousins is a close contact. And then, obviously with Kellen Mond, it's a lot, but it is something to keep an eye on and see how it affects their training camp for the next week, considering Jake Browning is the only person who actually knows the offense that they're running in Minnesota right there, and who knows how much he actually knows that offense in Minnesota. But switching from the quarterback position group to the wide receiver position group, not of the Vikings, but of the Ravens, I've been seeing some big things coming out of Baltimore. Now, for anybody who is a Ravens fan, this must be exciting news for you guys. I think it's pretty exciting as well, considering, in my opinion, the wide receiver group was a bit lacking over there in Baltimore the last few years, which could be hindering some of Lamar Jackson's growth and progression, and also just ability to really pass the football when, Mark Andrews is your number one guy at a tight end position. There's nothing wrong with that, but you want to have some solid wide receiver options as well. Like when you think of teams like the Chiefs and the Bills, they all have great wide receiving cores, and is what has made them so successful the last few years. Obviously, the Ravens being successful as well, but the glaring issue at the wide receiver position has been something they keep getting pegged for. Now, the new look wide receiver group includes Rashad Bateman and Sammy Watkins, both of them pulling in impressive touchdowns this past week during training camp, which is exciting to hear. Rashad Bateman had an awesome grab over star cornerback Marlon Humphrey. So take that as you will. He's already getting the best of, one of the best in the league, in my opinion, at the cornerback position. And the fact that he's showing up like that and making a difference. Sammy Watkins, who has always been a great athlete and a great wide receiver, he's just never been able to stay healthy, is also of note, making big plays in practice for them. These are things that the Ravens fans have got to be eating up and have got to be excited about. In my opinion, the Ravens, their defense has been really good. It's their wide receiving group that has been struggling the most the last few years. They have a great running game, obviously, with Lamar Jackson and J.K. Dobbins. A lot of things to be excited about. If this wide receiver group can really put it together and build around what they already have going on offense here, there is a lot to be excited for. Lamar Jackson is playing more under center from what, John Harbaugh had came out and said earlier in the offseason. That's what they plan on working with. So it sounds like they want to really get Lamar Jackson throwing the football more, playing a little bit more of a traditional style while still maintaining the dual threat that he brings to the table. But they want to really get him, playing more of a pocket passer style, which I know is more John Harbaugh's style of things. They obviously rebuilt their offense around him when they transitioned from Joe Flacco to Lamar Jackson, but I know that that's probably more of John Harbaugh's taste. He, won a Super Bowl with that style of play, so I think he's looking for the more pocket passer, but also still having a dual threat that Lamar Jackson brings, which, he is the most athletic quarterback we have seen in the NFL since Michael Vick, in my opinion. But again, exciting stuff in Baltimore. I'm very excited to see where that ends up going. I really hope that this wide receiver group can get it together. If Sammy Watkins can stay healthy, the combination with him, Bateman, and Brown, there's a lot to be excited for over there. Now, shifting focuses back to the quarterback position here. This is something that is hitting close to home for me. Carson Wentz, from what I am reading, sounds like he is foregoing surgery, at least for the time being. This is something that, for me as a Colts fan, I'm kind of like twiddling my fingers and just like anxiously awaiting for news. It doesn't sound like this is going to go well, in my opinion. I'm a Colts fan, and I've tried to be positive about everything that's going on. I really wanted Matthew Stafford. We got Carson Wentz, the whole Frank Reich thing. I was unsure about it, but then I kind of bought in because their whole relationship is really well. I've seen the interviews with Wentz, but we're not even through the first week of training camp, and Carson Wentz is already going down with an injury. Quarterback play has been the issue for this team. I'm not saying that Phillip Rivers didn't do a great job last year. We made it to the playoffs, but it was an aging Phillip Rivers who just could not quite compete with the younger, up-and-coming quarterbacks that we had. And To be fair, I would even argue he might have had a better game than Josh Allen, but there were just a few throws here and there that he missed in that playoff game, and you could tell having an aging quarterback was just not what this team needs. Carson Wentz was supposed to be the lifeblood, and from what I'm reading, if he forgoes the surgery, it's going to limit his mobility throughout the season if the injury lingers and does not heal on its own. And if that limits his mobility, I mean, that's a big part of what made Wentz so successful during his MVP season, and I just, scratching my head a bit. I'm excited to see what Ellinger and Eason bring to the table for the quarterback situation over there in Indianapolis. That's something I'll be keeping a close eye on. One, as a fan, and two, as an NFL person now who likes to talk about all the news going on. But a little bit of concern in my opinion. I'm hoping that it all goes well. I'm hoping the rehabbing for the next few days helps with whatever issue he's dealing with. But I mean, I don't know. For some reason in the back of my mind, I just feel like, man, this is going to turn into surgery and we're just not going to have Wentz, and there goes a second-round draft pick. The whole Wentz experiment doesn't work out, and we're starting either Eason or Ellinger going into week 1. And, I mean, who knows? They could light it up these next few weeks and go through the preseason, but I just, I'm more inclined to put all my money on Wentz than I am on two unknowns at this point. But that's where I'm at with the Carson Wentz situation. Hopefully we'll find out some more as the week goes on. I'm assuming he's not going to be practicing for the next few days while he just kind of works on his foot, keeps himself moving, and tries to get back to being 100%, and whether that's going to happen or not. Now, on the topic of injury news, this was a big one that came out this morning as I was prepping for the show, and this is really unfortunate, but it sounds like 10th overall pick wide receiver Devontae Smith of the Eagles is going to miss at least 2 to 3 weeks with an MCL sprain, which is tough. Being it's a sprain, it's something that could, it could go longer, it could go shorter. It's one of those things that, if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles, do not rush him back. You got to take your time with this. MCL sprains are tricky. They're weird injuries because they can linger, so hopefully this doesn't extend beyond the 2 to 3 week period they have. From what it sounds like, Smith is probably going to be missing the game against the Steelers in a week. So whether that ends up, going into 2 weeks of the preseason, which the preseason is only 3 weeks now, so you have less time to prep for the actual season, it remains to be seen. But hopefully this is just a minor setback. Devontae Smith, from what it sounds like, has been having a solid training camp, and I've been reading a lot of good things about him. I've seen some good catches from him just from videos that are passing around the internet. But overall, tough situation for the young guy. A lot of questions about his size and durability already when he was coming into the league. So this doesn't necessarily help his case per se, but also he was always relatively healthy throughout his entire career of college. He missed the Reese's Bowl this past year with a finger injury, which is completely unrelated. So, I mean, he's overall been a really healthy guy. It just sucks that, a big thing was, is he going to be able to hold up in the NFL? And then here he goes spraining his MCL going through training camp. We'll have to see how that whole thing works out for him, but, wish him the best, speedy recovery. Hopefully it doesn't linger. I want to see Devontae Smith at full force. I want to see him lighting it up on that field because the Philadelphia Eagles need all the help they can get with that receiving core. Now, the next few things that I'm picking out here are more just kind of like training camps that I've been keeping an eye on, that I'm curious about, that obviously have, implications for some of the teams that aren't doing or have not been doing, I guess, as well the last few years per se, and some of these teams longer than the last few years. But we'll start off with the Bengals training camp. From what it sounds like, the offense over there has been struggling a bit. However, towards the end of the week, things started to pick up. It sounds like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are starting to get together and really, make those connections, the connection throws and passes and catches that they were making throughout their entire career in LSU together. There was a 25-yard throw going around the internet the other day of Joe Burrow bombing the football to the outside over to Jamar Chase. So exciting stuff there. I have been very critical on the whole Jamar Chase draft pick rather. In my opinion, I really thought the Bengals should have went offensive line, but again, they went Jamar Chase. It is what it is. Can't take back the decision now. But from what it sounds like, the offense is finally starting to get it together. It's been a tough week. The highlight, though, for the Bengals camp has been that defense. The defense apparently has been playing very well. They've been very stingy. This is a very massive weak point for the team last year, and that might even be an understatement for the Bengals. They've made some big signings. They remade their starting secondary and corners with Chidobe Awuzie and Mike Hilton, and then on top of that, they brought in Trey Hendrickson on the D line. So this is a completely remade defense, and the fact that you're hearing things like they're standing out. They're looking good. They've been very stingy. They've been, kind of suffocating the offense a little bit. It's like a double-edged sword. Is it, the defense is really showing up and they're looking this good, or is it a matter of the offense is really struggling that badly? We'll have to see, but, again, we're all just speculating and talking about news up until we get some preseason action going and we actually see some real games going on here. But excited to see how the Bengals camp turns out altogether. I mean, this is a team that I would love to see, kind of reshape their trajectory, because the last few years things have not really looked good over there in Cincy, and I would love to see Joe Burrow have a successful career in the NFL, and if he is the heir to the throne there in Cincinnati and can be a solid replacement for Andy Dalton and Carson Palmer before him, that would be exciting stuff. Now, on the topic of young quarterbacks, this one had a lot of drama going into it up until late last week when things finally got sorted out. Zach Wilson finally reporting for training camp after what seemed like a low-key contract issue. It was taking a little bit longer to get him signed up and, handled. He got his fully guaranteed contract, though. It sounds like, I think the first 3 quarterbacks that were taken off the board, they all got fully guaranteed deals, which is massive for those guys. But after a little bit of extra waiting, Wilson did show up and report. He took a red-eye flight the night prior to the first day on Friday for him. It sounded like the offense struggled a little bit the first day. It was an installment day. They were getting a lot, just thrown at them, especially with Zach Wilson being there for the first time that whole week. But Zach Wilson was hitting some solid passes to Elijah Moore. There was a 50-plus yard bomb that he threw on Saturday that was very impressive, right on the money. And it sounds like from Jets camp, everyone's very excited. The entire new regime, we have Robert Salah, Zach Wilson's the new guy at quarterback. Things are looking good for the New York Jets so far. Obviously, positive views coming out of training camp. I haven't really read anything too negative about what's going on there. The offensive line sounds like it's looking promising with Elijah Vera Tucker there. And then obviously you have Micah Becton, who's holding it down over there. What a year he had last year. So a lot to be excited about for them. It's exciting that Zach Wilson is finally over there in New York and passing the ball around. This is something that I know Jets fans have been anxiously awaiting for. And the few days before he finally got signed up and showed up to camp, I was reading a lot of angry Jets fans being like, what the hell's going on? Sign our guy so we can get this thing rolling. Like, don't screw this up, New York. So happily enough, things are settled over in New York. I'm excited to see how things work out for Wilson. I'll definitely be keeping an extra close eye on the New York Jets training camp this next week to see how he fares compared to how I've been watching the other people around the league. It was unfortunate not being able to see anything really come from him up until the very last couple of days of last week. Now, on the topic of top draft quarterback picks, Trevor Lawrence, we'll talk about him as well. This was, lightning in a bottle last week. I mean, you want to talk about having a very solid first week of camp. He looked great, accurate on a lot of his throws. He looked very good. I mean, he looked as advertised is what I could say. I mean, and hearing him in interviews and things like that, I have not really gotten to see much of his college interviews and stuff, but just the way he talks and presents himself, it's like a la Peyton Manning, a la Andrew Luck, a la those top draft picks that were just considered like the ideal mold for a quarterback. So you love the way he sounds, the way he throws the football, the way he delivers. He had that crazy touchdown throw to Tim Tebow, which lit up the internet. And you already know that all of the networks, if Tim Tebow catches a touchdown pass at any point this season, it is going to be a media firestorm, and we got a taste of it last week when he caught that touchdown pass, and that was just during 7-on-7s. There was no defensive line or anything like that. That was literally just 7-on-7s, and I saw that video go around multiple times. It popped up from multiple different feeds, and I got the same exact video again and again and again. So exciting stuff to see. Another thing I'd like to point out from the Jaguars is their O-line has been looking pretty solid. From what I've been reading on the training camp reviews and everything like that, everyone's really excited for the offensive line there. This is third year, not second year. They've been together 2 years prior, going into their third year. So a lot of cohesion with the offensive line from what it sounds like. They're picking up right where they left off. And this is something that, it reminds me of like the Indianapolis Colts. They've had pretty much the same starting group for the last 3 years as well. And cohesion on the offensive line is something that's very important to have because, the offensive line is where everything starts on the offense. It literally begins there. The ball is snapped from the offensive line. Now, cohesion is massive. You want to have that, that rapport together. You want the guys to trust each other and know that I have my guy's back and my guy has my back, so it's very good to see that the O-line is getting praise and it's also getting recognition and they're looking good because as a Colts fan, having seen what happened to Andrew Luck when we did not have an offensive line, it really pained me to see that and go through that as a Colts fan. And there's still a piece of me that is very sour about it. I'm very excited to see Trevor Lawrence in the NFL. And, Zach Wilson's another one. Justin Fields is another one. Obviously, I'm excited to see all these guys that are coming into the league. Trey Lance. But when you think about quarterbacks and being protected, a lot of them fail because they are not protected properly. And, we saw somebody as good as Andrew Luck end up retiring early because of it. So the fact that they have a solid line that looks like they're coming out of the gates really strong is exciting for me. I'm very excited about the Jaguars, even though they are a division rival. I want to see Trevor Lawrence flourish. I would love to see him do well in the league. I do not want to see a prospect as good as him completely burn into the ground because the Jaguars fail to protect him. So that's exciting for me. I'm sure the Jaguars fans are excited about it as well. A lot of attention going on there in Duval County. And I'll tell you right now, as a Colts fan, I see you guys. So be ready. Now, the last thing I have for you guys before I send you off for the rest of the week and catch you in the review later on this week on Friday, we are going to discuss the Austin Bills. This was something that popped up in my feed yesterday, and I was surprised to read about it, but Buffalo is apparently working on getting a new stadium, and they're using cities, and Austin is one name that popped up as leverage for Buffalo. From everything that I've read, it's not like negotiations are falling apart or anything, but it sounds like they're having a little bit of a difficulty trying to get the new stadium over there in Buffalo. Governor Cuomo and all them, the officials, are trying to, come up with an agreement on how much money I'm assuming the team and city is going to have to supply for that. But Austin is apparently very interested in bringing in an NFL team, and they would be very happy to bring in Buffalo. Now, Texas has, two teams now? Because we have the Houston Texans, we have the Dallas Cowboys, right? And if I'm not missing another Texas team, I don't think so. Yeah, it's just those two Texas teams. If the Austin Bills are a thing, I mean, you got Josh Allen, who is, flourishing at this point. The Bills have become a legitimate contender in the AFC. I mean, that's a very sexy team to bring in to a destination like Austin, Texas. I mean, and it's the Bills of all things. Like, that works. So the Austin, it works. It sounds weird to me, but it works at the same time. That's something we'll have to keep an eye on. I'm all for relocations and stuff like that happening. I love seeing the league get spiced up a little bit. It's been a long time since we've really seen anybody, I guess not a long time since we've seen anyone up and move, but we haven't seen like an expansion team or anything like that in a while. And that's something I'm always on the, keeping a lookout for, is I'd love to see the prospect of an expansion team or something. But seeing the teams move from Oakland to LA and from San Diego to LA, and then, the Raiders going out to Las Vegas. I'm all for that kind of stuff, shaking up the league, whatever it may be. It spices things up a little bit, changes things up. I know fan bases get crushed and their souls are taken from them when that kind of stuff happens, but the Austin Bills, man, I don't know. I kind of like it. The Austin Bills, they're a red, white, and blue team. Texas team Bills. Huh. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. But that's pretty much it for the show today. As always, like, comment, share, sub, all that good stuff. If you enjoy the content, if you're listening to this podcast on Stitcher, TuneIn, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it may be, this is a video-based podcast. We're doing this on YouTube. If you haven't checked us out there, check it out, subscribe, all that good stuff. But I will catch you guys next time. Enjoy the rest of your week, everybody. I'll catch you at least, but the latest on Friday. Maybe I'll drop a video or something throughout the week, but I'll catch you at the latest this Friday for a week 2 training camp review. Have a good one, everyone.